What is going on YouTube? This is the Middle School Math Man. This video is going to be on using the quadratic formula. So, the quadratic formula looks very scary. There it is. That is the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. I'm going to do something. I'm about to sing. Yes, I know. My Algebra 1 teacher, way back when I was in middle school, showed us a video. It's a little song, and I have remembered it to this day. So my hope is that if I can embarrass myself for 30 seconds, but you remember the song, it will be worth it. So, here we go. It is to a popular children's tune. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. One more time. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So, just a quick little jingle that maybe you can use to help you remember the quadratic formula. So the cool thing about the quadratic formula is we can use it to solve any single problem with quadratics. We've talked about solving quadratics by graphing, looking at where it crosses the x-axis. We've talked about the square roots method. We've talked about solving by factoring. Now this method can be used to solve any single quadratic problem, so that's pretty cool. So before we get started, we have A, we have B, and we have C. So just a reminder, the number in the A position is what's in front of the x squared. If there is no number, it's a 1. The number in front of the x in the middle is the B, and the last number is the C. So that is very important to keep in mind. Alright, so the first step, we're just going to plug in all the numbers for the letters. So x equals negative b. So if you notice, b is already negative. So if we have negative b, well, that's a negative of negative 8. So that would be positive 8 plus or minus the square root of b squared. Remember, when you're plugging in numbers in for variables, they should be in parentheses. So we have negative 8 squared minus 4ac. So 4 times 1, that's a, times c is negative 20. And then it's all divided by 2a. Well, a is just 1, so that's just going to be 2 on the bottom. Alright, so the next step is going to be to simplify. So we have all this stuff inside the parentheses that we're going to simplify. So negative 8 in parentheses squared is 64. Minus 4 times negative 20. Alright, so taking it a step further, we have the square root of 64. So negative 4 times negative 20 is positive 80. So we have 64 plus 80, so that is 144, all divided by 2. Alright, so I'm going to kind of break up the problem here. I'm going to separate it. So now, this is where we're at. We have 8 plus or minus the square root of 144 divided by 2. So we're pretty close to getting our solutions here. Remember the plus or minus? So our two solutions, we're going to have 8 plus, what is the square root of 144? It's 12. And then that's going to be divided by 2. So we have 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So that's going to be one of our solutions. And then the other solution comes from the minus part of that plus or minus sign. So 8 minus 12 is negative 4. So we have negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So our two solutions here are negative 2 and 10. So that is how we use the quadratic formula. It looks crazy, right? This looks like a very scary formula, but with a little bit of practice, and once you get the hang of it, you can start getting used to it. We're going to do 2 more problems here. So same thing. The first step is going to be plugging in all the numbers. So x equals negative b. If you want to write this down at the beginning of each problem, that is something you could do while you're getting used to it. So x equals negative b. Again, b is already negative here. So that's going to turn into positive 12 plus or minus the square root of b squared, remember the parentheses, minus 4ac. A in this case is negative 1. There's a negative sign there. C is negative 18, not just 18, remember the sign. All divided by 2a. Remember a is negative 1. Alright, so next we're going to simplify. So underneath that square root sign, we have negative 12 in parentheses squared. That's positive 144. Now we have negative 4 times negative 1, so that's going to be positive 4. We still have this times negative 18, and then in the denominator we're going to have negative 2. We're not simplified inside the square root yet. So 144 plus 4 times negative 18. So 4 times negative 18 is negative 72. So 144 plus negative 72 is 72. Alright, so we are pretty close to getting our answers here. Now, 72 is not a perfect square. You can turn it into a decimal, that is okay. So we have 12 plus the square root of 72, if we turn that into a decimal, is 8.49 divided by negative 2. So 12 plus 8.49 divided by negative 2 is going to give us negative 10.25. If I'm rounding that to 2 decimal places. And then remember, we also need to do the minus part of the plus or minus. That should not be an equal sign. It looks like an equal sign. That should be a subtraction sign. Alright, so 12 minus 8.49 divided by negative 2 is going to give us negative 1.76. So our 2 answers to this problem are negative 10.25 and negative 1.76. Kind of ran out of room there, but those would be the answers to this problem. We have one more. This one is a little bit different, as you're going to see. So the quadratic formula, first step, we're going to plug in all the numbers. X equals negative b. B is positive in this case, it's 5, so negative b would be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4a in this case is 2 times c, which is 4, all divided by 2a. So if we simplify that, we have 25, and then if we multiply together negative 4 times 2 times 4, negative 4 times 2 times 4 is negative 32. So we have 25 minus 32, all divided by 4. So if you notice, we're actually going to have a negative sign underneath of that square root. So if you're working these problems and you see a negative sign underneath the square root, well, we can't take the square root of a negative number. So In this case, our answer would be no solution. We're gonna do one more problem here. Our answers have been, so far we've had 2 solutions. We just saw an example where there's no solution. The last one would be 1 solution. So this problem, we're going to have 4x squared minus 12x plus 9 equals 0. All right, so first step, again, plug into the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b. So negative b is already negative, so it's going to be positive 12 plus or minus the square root of b squared. Remember that song? Minus 4ac divided by 2a. So once you plug in, the next step is to simplify. So we have 144 minus, so 4 times 4 times 9, 4 times 4 times 9 is going to give us 144. Alright, so we have a 0 underneath of the square root sign. I'm going to split up the page here. Alright, so obviously the square root of 0 is just 0. So what we have here what we have here is a problem where we're going to have 1 solution. So in this case, we have 12 plus the square root of 0, which is just 0 divided by 8. So that's going to be 12 over 8. 12 over 8 is 3 over 4. If we do the same thing with the subtraction sign, right, the plus or minus, that is still 12 over 8, which is 3 over 4. Excuse me, not 3 over 4. I apologize. It is 4 over 3. So as we saw earlier, right, if it's the same answer, that means we have 1 solution. So the answer is 4 over 3. So we have 2 solutions, no solution, or 1 solution. Those are our 3 types of answers.